Hello and welcome to yet another housing.com webinar. Our topic of discussion today is actually a question that's always there in the minds of prospective home buyers. And that question is now the right time to buy a home? I'm Jumur Ghosh, editor-in-chief housing.com news, and here to give us their insights on whether 2021 is really the right time to buy a house, I'm joined by an esteemed set of panelists. Mr. Amit Modi, he is the director, ABA Corp, and president-elect Credai Western UP. Sir, welcome.
Thank you.
Rajendra Joshi is CEO, Residential, the Brigade Group. Rajendra, sir, great to have you here.
Thank you, Jamur.
Anuj Karadia is the director, Dosti Realty. Anuj, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jumur.
Sanjay Kadyali is the business head for housing finance and emerging market mortgages for the Kotak Mahindra Bank. Sanjay,
thank you so much, Jumur. Yeah, great to be here.
Siddharth Ansari is the MD for Primark Properties Private Limited. Siddharth, welcome. You're on mute.
Thank you so much, Jumar. It's a pleasure to be here.
And Mani Rangarajan is the Group CEO for Housing.com, Makan.com, and PropTiger.com.
Great, Jumur. Thank you for having me.
So now, before we get down into the specifics of home buying in 2021, I have a question about the question itself. So is there such a thing as a good time or a right time to buy a home? And if there is such a thing, then does that also mean that there is a bad time or a wrong time to buy a home? So I'm really curious to know what you think about this. Mr. Joshi, you're smiling, so I think you already know what my follow-up questions will be. Why don't we start with your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So I would say this, that the time to buy really is a personal decision, because home buying is a personal decision. In most times, this will be one of your largest investments that you are making. So in my mind, the timing, particularly if you're an end user, correct?
Yeah.
So if you're an investor, it's different. Then you are looking for appreciation, you're looking for returns on the property, etc. But if you're an end user, what is more important is what's the location, what's the infrastructure in that place, who is the developer, what's the track record of the developer, what kind of product, what kind of amenities. I think these are more important questions to look at rather than worry about is it the right time, wrong time, because you are at a stage in life when either you are starting a family, so you want to buy a house, or your family has expanded, you want to buy a house, or you have moved up in your career. So those are the various things. So in my mind, the prices will keep moving up and down, or as Sanjay did point out, the prices haven't moved up at all in the last 3-4 years. So I really don't think there would be a wrong time, right time. But as industry people, we all know, I mean, we will keep talking about it. So in my mind, is there a right time, wrong time? I don't think that. All times are good times.
Yeah, I like the way you've answered that question. Mr. Modi, what are your thoughts on this?
See, I'll partially agree with Joshi ji.
Okay.
I think there's always a good time.
Okay.
And as far as whenever you have money in your pocket and the interest rates are so low, so this time is most preferred now. But rest of the time, I believe if we are seeing the price increase in 5,000 rupees a square feet or 6,000 rupees a square feet property is generally across India. This is thing except Mumbai or in some very luxury pockets are there. So if we don't go in that pocket, apart from that, 5,000, 6,000 is the general price. So there, if you have 200 rupees less or 200 rupees more, it doesn't bother. So whenever you have money in your pocket, I think that's a good time to buy the property.
All right, fine. What about you, Anuj? Do you think that it's always a good time to buy a home? And are you saying that if that's the case, there is no wrong time to buy a home?
Yeah, Chumur. So even I do agree with Mr. Joshi that there's almost never a bad time to buy a home, and it's always very subjective and based upon the individual why they want to buy a home. They are possibly at that right time in their career to either expand to a larger home, or their family is growing larger, so they have a need of a larger space. And that time would not really be defined by market conditions or scenarios. It's only from an investor standpoint when I would say that there has been a good time, better time, or like a best time to buy the home, how it was in the early 2003 to 6 when prices skyrocketed tremendously, compared to now when in the last 5-7 years there's been no real appreciation.
Yeah. All right. What about you, Siddharth? What's your take on this?
I personally feel, there is no better time to buy a home than it is today. So
Okay.
simply 2-3 reasons. One, where if you take the PMAY subsidy into account, or you take the interest rate into account, there can't be a better or a lower rate, or the PMA subsidy will eventually end sometime. It was increased for COVID for 1 year. Second, suddenly because of the world going digital and virtual, the need for space has increased. In a family of four, all the four need their own spaces. It's not only work from home, it's study from home, it's even the wife or who's a non-working woman doing some activity from home. So each one needs their own space. So the need for space has genuinely increased. And if there is a need for space, like my other panelists have added, there can't be a right time or a wrong time.
Yeah.
Also, while prices might have not increased, but apart from 1 or 2 markets where prices really shot up, there have never been instances in the Indian market of prices falling down by 10, 20, 30%, or even 5%, 45%. Apart from a selective one-off cases where prices are artificially shot up. So prices are not, and prices with the prices of metals or raw materials going up, prices are only going to go up. It is just a matter of time before prices, in some of our projects and market prices have already started increasing. I think prices will only go north. It's not going to go south. So with this and the need for space and the interest subsidy and other factors put together, I think there can't be a better time to buy a house if there is a need to buy a house.
Yeah. So, Mani, looking at the traffic trends, does it look like, demand is making a comeback, post all the fears that we had about the second wave? What do you think is happening in 2021 currently? Mani, you're on mute.
When I look at demand, we find that demand has come up to well over pre-COVID levels. I think there is a difference between COVID, the phase 1 that we faced last year, and the one that we are facing this year. During the time last year, especially when the first lockdown was announced towards the end of March and towards the first half of April, traffic plummeted. So we saw traffic come down about 40% on the buy side, both in new projects as well as in resale, and about 60% on the rental side. This time around, the traffic decline was less pronounced. And I think that is partially aided by the fact that during the first lockdown last year, a lot of companies have announced job cuts as well as salary cuts. And we have not seen that this time around. The second thing is from all the various consumer sentiment surveys and the behavior of the consumer is that the need for a home has never been greater, right, in our country's history. And one feels safe within the confines of the home. I think all my esteemed panelists have made some awesome points. I think there's never a bad time to buy a home. And the one thing I'd like to add is the affordability in terms of home buying has improved over the years, right? So normally the affordability is measured by the number of years you need to earn to buy a home. In a city like Mumbai, if I look at 5 years ago, it would take almost like 11 to 12 years of income, and now it's come down to about 5. And the same goes across other cities. So you're seeing growth in development in the peripheral areas of the city, the emergence of smart cities, the emergence of metros is solid connectivity. So people no longer need to confine to themselves to trying to buy a home in the central business district, but can look at the peripheral areas of the city. So that's a reason, I think, why it's become easier and more affordable to buy a house.
Yeah. So Sanjay, everybody's talking about all the things going for the market right now. Are you seeing a reflection of that in the demand in terms of housing finance? Tell us a little bit about the trends that you're seeing there.
Absolutely. I think so, and this is across all banks and NBFCs. I think what all the panelists are saying, that's one clear voice across people who need houses are buying houses. I think that's a significant change over the last 3 to 4 years. I think the second thing that has happened is that the confidence on the real estate as an asset class has gone up. And I'm not saying from an appreciation perspective, I'm saying the credibility of the developers. So post RERA and the kind of developers who are there in the market, the customer is absolutely confident that this is the asset class I want to be in if I'm in for long term, because a home loan or a home buy is a 5-10 year buy minimum. I think the second thing that we are observing, what Mani talked about, is the affordability. So if I were to, let's say, call it an affordability index, in India, the affordability index is an all-time low, which is a good thing. So affordability index is what? It is your EMI divided by your income. So incomes have gone up in the last 5 years, but your interest rates have come down and your real estate prices have come down or are flat. Let's call it flat. So actually your affordability index, which is EMI. So EMI as a part of your income has shrunk, which is why people are now moving from 1 BHK to 2, 2 to 3, taking larger houses, considering moving from a rental to a own use. I think that's a big segment. Most of our customers, I think over 80% of our customers, I can confidently say, are customers who buy for their own use. And as financiers, we are extremely confident lending to that profile.
All right. So, obviously, since the topic is 2021, the right time to buy a home, we've gotten a lot of questions around that. So I'd like to bring in some audience questions. These are just great questions. Actually, my audience is doing my job for me. So that's fantastic. So I'm going to sort of give you a sense of what our audience members want to know. So Mayank Ji is asking, why are real estate prices not dropping, even though there is a glut of apartments in the inventory of builders? Gurpreet Singh is asking the same thing, why there are no decline in prices. Shubham Kumar is asking, that is this the right time to buy a low budget property for personal use? And if yes, then what is the benefit? And Senthil is asking what a lot of home buyers are thinking, that do you think it's a good time to sort of buy a home during a pandemic? So essentially people are asking about, of course, should I be buying amidst a pandemic, and what's happening with the prices? Why aren't they softening? So what can we tell audience members? Mr. Joshi, let's start with you.
So I would tell this, I would quite agree with what Siddharth said. One trend that I see clearly is that prices are going to firm up.
Yeah.
And as Sanjay did point out, prices haven't increased at all in the last 3 to 4 years, maybe longer in markets like Bangalore.
Yeah.
But the input costs are going up. Yeah. Second, if you see, there is a large brand consolidation which is happening in the real estate market.
Yeah.
More and more smaller developers are going out of the play. The share of the larger players is increasing. Larger players who have a track record and ability to deliver, etc. And costs are going up. For example, the steel prices have gone up by nearly 40 to 50% in the last 6 to 8 months, and they're staying firm. Typically, steel prices go up and come down quickly. The global steel demand is going up, and that in a city like Bangalore is increasing the cost of construction by 100 to 150 rupees, steel alone. And there is petroleum which is going up. So I would think that once the markets come back to normalcy, in cities like Bombay, it's already, in cities like Bangalore, the lockdown is slowly getting unwound. Prices will firm up. 1, 2, should you buy in this time? I would agree with what my other panelists said. This is a low interest regime. It won't stay here for very long. So it would be good to move into product, and prices will move up. I'm very certain of that. So considering these two factors, you should buy from a home, but I would say always from a large reputed developer, because these are difficult times still for smaller players. NBFC are not lending. Financial institutions are very wary of lending to smaller developers. So you need to be clear about where you are buying, but it's a good time to buy.
Yeah. So Anuj, you obviously represent a really price sensitive market. So what do you have to say about, the prices not softening? What do you think our audience members need to know?
Certainly, Jumur. So I would say that we've been doing multiple cost studies of our construction cost over the last 4-5 years or so. And if we just compare our cost of construction, that if you relate it to all developers across Mumbai and Thane, in the difference in cost in Jan 2020 and June 2021 is anywhere between 8 to 12% increase in prices of our input costs. As Joshiji explained, steel prices were expected to fall down when the rain started, but there's been no change in that. Even cost of copper for our wires and cables, cost of nickel, cost
Yeah.
of aluminum, and
Yeah.
more importantly, cost of labor and cement. All of them are on the rise.
Yeah.
So even though consumers are seeing that government is passing on various incentives, be it stamp duty across Maharashtra or lower interest rates, it's extremely challenging for a developer to further reduce prices to
Yeah.
what the customer expects from us.
Yeah.
And I would say that across various, even globally, prices have been increasing tremendously, and it's a pattern that eventually does come to India. It starts in the West, eventually goes to the Middle Eastern markets in Dubai and Turkey, and then comes to India. So, for example, I was just seeing in the news that in the month of May 21, home prices increased by over 35% in Turkey.
Yeah.
In the US and UK, home prices are at a 14-year high.
Yeah.
So India still has certain time to come to that stage.
Yeah.
But definitely, maybe in the next 3 to 4 quarters or even after that, right
Yeah.
now it's just a matter of sustaining and maintaining a healthy cash flow. But
Yeah.
after that, majority of developers will be pushed and have no option but to increase home prices.
Yeah. Mr. Modi, you represent a market, where inventory overhang has been an issue. What kind of impact has it had on pricing? Has it had any impact on pricing? Have prices softened? What can you tell us about that market?
See, a lot of inventory was available in last 3 to 4 years, but
Yeah.
that inventory has suddenly vanished now. And moreover, the inventory which was available at that price, developers were not making any profit on those things. It
Yeah.
was just that they were not able to pay to financial institutions and the seller land authority also. But now we see the rise in the material price, like you see cement, steel, what rightly said by Joshiji and Anuj. All the materials have increased significantly, and now it depends at what stage of construction you are and what material you are purchasing at this time. So your cost is varying from, you can say, 10 to 15%. If you are at you say civil construction stage, you are just putting up the civil work and all, then the cost will rise more. And if you are at finishing stage, then cost will be definitely a bit different, because steel and cement and PVC is not the input of that construction stage. And moreover, GST input we used to get, which is not available to developers. So definitely we have to build in that cost also. So in near future, I believe whatever inventory is available, and people have faith, or have faith on developers, they should buy the property immediately. Otherwise, prices are going to rise. It is not going to suffer at all. Developers are, specifically in our region, developers are not in position to soften the prices at all. So I'll go with the other panelists on this.
Yeah. So Siddharth, would you say it's a similar trend in your market, or would you say it's a slightly different story as far as prices are concerned?
No, I think it's absolutely the same story. And if you want to add on to what Mr. Joshi said, there have been big developers and small developers. I think, what had happened is, because of the overhang of certain malpractices about certain developers across the country, mostly north side, customers were not confident. But, the large transition has happened with RERA and GST both kicking in. It was one shift from unorganized to organized, and also the shift from honest and true developers, small developers, to larger developers. Now the challenge why the prices is not coming down, because the costs are rising. So prices actually can't come down. And all the customers are actually chasing the same inventory of the better developers. So, nobody wants to go and pick something which is inferior in any manner, whether it's the quality of the construction or the quality of the developer. So if you are all chasing a better product and a better warranty and a guarantee, how can the prices come down? So and actually, if you look like most panelists have already mentioned, but it's not only the cost of construction that are going up, the cost for sanctions, the cost for finances, all of these other ancillary parts to the project, the timelines to the project, people who've taken land over the last 2 years have not been able to launch, the cost of interest. So these ancillaries also going up. There is no way the cost will come down. The cost is only just going to increase. Because everybody wants to buy the best.
So, Mani, it's a question we get asked very often, right? That, okay, this market has an inventory overhang, but why are the prices crashing? So this correlation, is it such a simple one that if there is an inventory, overhang in a certain market, then the prices have to come crashing down? Or is there another way, that as home buyers, when you're analyzing cost, is there another way to look at it?
Not really. It's pretty complex, and inventory overhang happens because there's a mismatch between demand and supply, right?
Yeah.
If you take any market across the world, even if you take a market such as the US, where demand far exceeds supply, you would find a case of inventory overhang.
Yeah.
And to understand inventory overhang better, we need to circle back a few years and go back to the pre-RERA times, when a lot of developers, with lower reputations, tended to launch projects across the country. And we saw like a glut of inventory, particularly in markets such as Noida, right?
Yeah.
Now, if we fast forward to post-RERA, developers have been extremely careful about launching new projects. And most of them have focused on completing existing projects rather than launch new projects. So if you look at the trend over the last couple of years, new sales have consistently exceeded new launches in the market, with the result that inventory overhang has reduced. Right?
Yeah.
Some of the inventory overhang which we see in cities may not even sell at all. Right? We got to be realistic because we still have instances of stalled projects across the country. But what I would say is that there has also been a flight to quality.
Yeah.
We have developers of repute here on this panel, and you see customers flock towards more branded developers as opposed to the lower reputed ones.
Yeah.
In a country like China, for example, the top 10 developers in the country tend to account for like 30 to 40% of sales, and that is consistently rising. Whereas in India, while it's been rising, it's still less than about 10% of sales. So over time, you're likely to see consolidation, and you're likely to see the share of branded developers increasing.
Yeah. And I think it's something we discuss in industry circles, right? That we say inventory overhang, it's like a one size fits all, but it's actually not. We don't know at what level of construction that inventory is. We don't know how long that inventory has been lying, and not all inventory is equal. Like you said, some of it is not saleable at all. So it's not just inventory overhang is equal to reduction in prices. It's also about the quality of the inventory. And I think that's something, it's important for audience members to understand that as well. Now, Sanjay, we've been talking about prices of real estate. Now, home finance is going through its lowest interest regime, right? But I think it's important to sort of question how long is this low interest regime going to last? Because like all good things, this will also come to an end, right? So what's your assessment?
Yeah, so I think absolutely very valid question. I think two simple things that anybody as a layman, and forget about people who understand finance, let's look at as a layman. I think let's look at what the central bank is saying. Central bank is saying that interest rates for the next few periods will be constant, or they are looking at an accommodative stand because their objective right now is get growth back.
Okay.
The second thing what they are saying is that the transmission of interest rates are much better.
Yeah.
So a home loan is a 10-year, 15-year product. Even if the rates are down right now, I think from an investor or a home buyer perspective, they should not look at where interest rates are now. They should look at what kind of interest rate regime is there. So the regime is transparency and transmission of rates. And everything now, at least what the banks fund, is linked to the RBI repo.
Yeah.
So unlike in the past, you cannot have a large gap of transmission of rate. So RBI reduces rate, you will see it. RBI increases, you will feel it. I think that should put a lot of confidence in the investor that there will be a lot of transparency in the long term on interest rates rather than looking at are the interest rates low right now.
All right. So, we've got a lot of micro location centric questions. So before we get down to the audience questions, I'd also like to know that your answer to this question, that is this the right time to buy a home, would that differ basis the micro location that you might be representing, or even the segment, or is there a one answer that fits all, to a question like this? I think that's another important aspect of this question, that we need to discuss. What do you think, Mr. Joshi?
I would think that if, for example, is it the right time to buy? For example, if you are in a market like Mumbai, South Mumbai, buying a luxury home, if you have the money, this is absolutely the right time, because I don't think the developers would be more stressed than this. They would be willing to sit on the table and negotiate. I used to work in Mumbai. I had projects in South Mumbai. So I can tell you that this would be a great time to go out and buy. In other markets, it would be, as I mentioned earlier, it would be as good a time as would be for any other. The only other aspect I would look at is things like PMAY, correct? They will have a certain shelf life. It may not extend for very, very long periods of time. So if you are in that bracket and looking to get those benefits, then this is the time to go out and buy. So those are the two things. Those who are in the luxury segment, and if you have the money, I'm sure the developers will be willing to negotiate because they want to move out the inventory, as Amitji did mention. Or if you are in the affordable segment looking out to buy a house, things like PMAY, I'm not too sure how long government will continue to subsidize this, say beyond say 2025 or 2024, etc. So these two, I think this is a great time to go out and buy property. The third thing I would say would be that do go out and look for locations where the infrastructure is coming up. One of my panelists did talk about a lot of cities are putting emphasis on metros, road connections, etc.
So, Mr. Joshi, we've had actually a couple of questions about the Bangalore market and Hyderabad market. So, as an expert, perhaps you could make some suggestions, for our audience members that these are the micro locations that, perhaps they could be looking at seriously.
So in Bangalore, I would say the favorite location has been the east of Bangalore because that is where most of the IT is coming up. But I would say the north of Bangalore is now seeing a lot of infrastructure development. And the government of Karnataka is putting up a very large industrial park, about 3,000 acre plus industrial park in North Bangalore, which I would see as a growth hub in the coming years. And they're putting up, the great thing is they're not just developing this, they're putting up infrastructure. So north of Bangalore, I would think would be a great place to invest in. East has already seen an appreciation, north will see the appreciation. Hyderabad, your famous markets closer, the Gachibowli, the financial district, etc. But also the same theory that the connectivity is improving. So even city sites are getting connected very well to the IT corridors. So even if you come to the central parts of Hyderabad or eastern parts of Hyderabad, they're all getting connected very well. So they are good places to invest today, because some of these places are today at about 6,000, 6,500. The one closer to the IT corridor, they're already moving up to 7,500, 8,000. So there is a price differential. So though I would say go invest in markets where connectivity is good. They may be a little away, but there is connectivity.
So Anuj, what recommendations would you give about the Mumbai market? And I'd also like to bring in an audience question where Ramesh Ramachandran is asking, will realty prices correct further in 2022 and 2023? And he's also asking, is it better to invest in Mumbai or Chennai? Now, I know this is an apples and pears question, but how would you like to address this question?
So to address the question, I would say that Mumbai is predominantly defined by its railway lines, the central line and the western line, or what you even, some people even term the central line as the harbor line. And the western line has already seen a lot of good development over the past couple of years, and is now majorly filled with new metro development coming up, metro line 2, 3, and 4. All of them are along central Mumbai. But there, the area I would say is a very, very heavily trafficked area. And coming to the eastern part of Mumbai, especially where you have the Eastern Freeway taking you from Kolaba to Ghatkopar towards Thane, is where home prices haven't risen as they have risen along the western part of Mumbai. So that would be a very good and upcoming location. Location starting all the way from Shivri to Baikala, Masgao, Vadala, Sayan, where actually we do a lot of work in Vadala and Sayan. And then Pawai, Kanjur Marg, Mulund are areas that have not experienced the highs what has been experienced along the western suburbs. And even with various developments of infrastructure, be it the Trans Harbour Link connecting Shivri to New Bombay and further to New Bombay Airport, once that achieves completion, there'll be a rapid change in infrastructure and change in housing preferences. And we will see the shift come and focus more towards the eastern part of Mumbai, actually.
Yeah.
Other than that, even I would say far off parts of Mumbai that actually I would not call them in Mumbai. They would be part of MMR
Yeah.
regions like I would say Kalher or Dombivali, Vasai Virar, and Naigaon.
Yeah.
All those zones were, I would say, fairly outskirts of Mumbai. But now with development and in those prices, in those areas, connectivity has improved drastically.
Yeah.
And with the advent of the metros, getting there has become very simple. For example, if you were to travel from Thane to Greater Thane, what we call even as village Kalher,
Yeah.
is just a 10-minute drive or so.
Yeah.
But you are able to buy a home at half the price of Thane.
Yeah.
You enjoy the social infrastructure of Thane, staying just 10 minutes away from Thane.
Yeah. Yeah.
And coming to the question, coming to the question asked by the attendee, definitely me being a Mumbaiker, I would always support Mumbai more compared to Chennai. But I'm
Okay.
sure Mani would have a different view.
Mani, would you like to be Team Chennai? Just for this question, just to sort of apprise you, one of our attendees has asked whether he should choose between Mumbai and Chennai. I know it's apples to pears comparison, but perhaps something you'd like to say about the Chennai market.
I think both markets have their merits, in terms of buying. It depends on the personal preference, right? And as Anuj said, there's enough room for price appreciation in Mumbai. Mumbai is consistently growing, and let's not forget that Mumbai constitutes about 30 to 35% of the country's real estate market. So far as Chennai is concerned, till like 1 to 2 years ago, the market was entirely almost South Chennai, right? So when you looked at the old OMR belt, Sholingan Road, it's almost the old, right? But what we are now seeing is the western part of Chennai, right? So for example, areas like, for example, Mogape, it's doing phenomenally well. And we are likely to see the northern part of Chennai, also kind of start to do well. It's like street Perambalur and all that. And one thing I would say about Chennai is now becoming a home to a lot of sunrise industries. So if you look at defense, you look at, for example, vehicles, you're looking at data centers, the market is kind of growing there. And once you see a lot of manufacturing activity in Chennai, then you're likely to see some amount of price appreciation as well. So it really depends on the personal preference. But what I would like to point out is that one could not go wrong investing in either Chennai or in Mumbai at current prices.
Yeah. Mr. Modi, we've got a couple of questions around the NCR market as well. Now, Sonia Ahuja, she's asking, what are your thoughts on the new launches in Delhi NCR? There's a specific Noida question. I'd like to take that up as well. Now, Anurag Jain is asking that, considering the pandemic situation, would it be advisable to book a flat in under construction projects as there is uncertainty of unforeseen lockdowns and economic impacts? And what is the probability of projects to be delivered on planned date in sector 150 in Noida? So I think even this under construction versus ready to move in, I think it's an important question, apart from the sectoral question as well. So what can you tell our audience members?
Yeah, Jhamur, in sector 150, most of the projects are under construction, except 2 projects. All 95% projects are under construction. Now, if you have trust with the developer, I think you should go with them. There's no problem in that. But you need to see the track record of the developers who are doing construction over there. But most of the developers, as far as 150 is concerned, I would rate them good developers, and they can go for 150. There's no problem. And moreover, at 150, because a lot of developers are there, and there was under construction inventory was there, but it was under construction, not completed inventory was there. So now some of the projects are 70-80% complete now. So they must have trust on those developers, and that they should take in 150. There's no, it shouldn't be a problem buying in 150 now.
All right. And I know Sonia Ahuja's question, it was a bit of a sweeping question about, the new launches in Delhi NCR. Would you like to just maybe comment on that quickly?
Yeah, in Delhi, you don't have any residential projects, but
Yeah.
Gurgaon, but in Gurgaon, you have a lot of inventory, I believe, on Sona.
Yeah.
So new sectors are there, and they have launched Deen Dayal scheme where 4 acres, 3 acres, 5 acres housings are also coming up. Previously,
Yeah.
it was 10 acre or above that, not
Yeah.
lesser than 10 acre housings were there. So a lot of inventory is there in Gurgaon. And Noida extension, we have launched some new projects, but credibility of the developer has to be seen, and they can go for Noida extension is really upcoming, and the prices are also very, very affordable right now. But at this stage, if they buy, then it will be really cheaper, and interest rate is also cheaper, so they should go for new launches also. There's no problem.
Yeah. Siddharth, can you make some recommendations in the Kolkata market? What kind of micro locations can buyers look at seriously?
So Kolkata largely is, it's a very large and a very old city, I think. So there are different markets at different price points. So based, Rajarat is, one large, where I think 40-50% of the sales are coming is the Gurgaon of Calcutta, where you have a planned township, whether it's IT, employment, social infra. So that is one, and it has enough to offer from a 4,000 rupee to a 6,000 rupee bracket. Then there are different suburbs at Joka, Southern Bypass, Garia, which is 3,000 rupee onward pricing. And then there are North Calcutta in different pockets. Rajarat amongst all looks at the most promising aspect. But a lot of times you think the demography of Calcutta is such that people want to expand or people want to shift to a better location within the same micro catchment.
Yeah.
So again, it would be all because there is the way it is. So each market is different. So that is what we see in Calcutta. People are more comfortable to stay closer to the family. There is more of a joint family system. So the need for space is coming because families are getting more micro, and the need for space, so they still want to stay within the same catchment. So these are some of the more promising catchments in Calcutta.
All right. Now, Sanjay, we've got a couple of home finance related questions, and I think these are important questions. So Biswajit is asking, that is 2021 the right time to take a home loan? So he's taken a spin on the right time to buy a home. Now he's saying, is it the right time to take a home loan? Subhash Mani is asking, I'm age 40. Is it lucrative to invest in a home loan now? And if yes, then for how many years? I think these questions are important, Sanjay, because we've discussed this before. I think we need to give our audience members a sense of where are the credit scores are at, the lending norms, have they become stricter? Because things have changed in the last couple of months even, right? So do give us an overview of, what's happening with home loan rates, credit scores, etc.
Absolutely. So on one side, you see home loan rates coming down. So they are, I think they are at the bottom over the last 13 or 14 years.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that eligibilities have gone up. So people have been very casual about their financial approach. And so while on one side we see CIBILs, and it's not that the pandemic has not resulted in everybody's CIBIL coming down. There are people where the CIBIL scores have actually gone up.
Yeah.
So they have liquidated their assets, they have reduced their leverage. They're saying, why take unnecessary interest costs? So this is like what I said, the market has moved from investor to user on the home segment. So, and the resale percentages have gone up. So we used to do about 10-12% resale. That's doubled in the last 1 year, which means effectively a lot of investors would have come out of their properties and sold to actual users.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very positive thing. People who are reducing their leverage, interest costs, their CIBIL scores are improving. From a home default perspective, I don't see too much of issue. But yes, people are incurring issues on the credit card, personal loans. And people, the way consumers are thinking that since home loan is the biggest part, I will not default. But can I go a little slow on my credit card payments or on my personal loan payments? Now that spoils the entire CIBIL. So this person's accessibility to finance will get impacted. So the message to everybody is, whether you want to buy a house right now whether you want to take a loan right now, I think it should come from your need and should not come from the external environment. You should not be over leveraged, and just keep as a cushion right now. Whatever your exposure is on a monthly basis, keep about 5 to 6 months of that as a liquidity aside. Whatever you are paying as an EMI. So if your EMI on all products put together is about 40,000, keep about 2.5 lakh aside in some other asset class which you can liquidate in 1 or 2 months. But I think the question that has been answered on home is the question that the same answer is applicable on a loan. So there is, if this is the best time to buy a home, this is the best time to take a finance.
Yeah. All right. So, it's interesting. We've been talking about buying a home. Our audience members clearly want us to sort of deep dive into what type of home. So we've got a couple of questions around, yes, we want to buy a home, but what type of a home? So I'd like to take up some audience questions. Now, Lakshmi Narayanan K is asking, is it better to buy an individual house or an apartment? Sneha Shastri Math is asking, it is my first time investment and I want to know which one would get me the best parallel income, whether it's a farm, a plot, or a flat. So, Mr. Modi, perhaps can you start with your insights? How do you evaluate what type of a home I should be buying right now?
See, we are sitting in NCR, and if you are buying a individual house, the cost of individual house and the apartment, it varies from 50 lakhs to individual house you may buy at 5 crore rupees. So there is a huge amount of difference in the prices. And as far as farm is concerned, further you can go down to 10 crore, 20 crore. So there is a huge gap. This is very difficult to answer that what kind of budget you have. But for a safe investment, if you are you want to take a house or home in a budget of 1 crore to 2 crore, then I would say certainly it should be an apartment.
All right. Would the answer be similar, Mr. Joshi, for the markets that you are representing?
So I would say this, that if you are looking to live in a home in comfort, I would always argue for apartments, for the simple reason is that the comforts that you get, the kind of service that you get in an apartment complex, you would not get in an individual house. I mean, if you want to call a plumber in an apartment complex, it's so much easier. In an individual house, you would have to call, chase some guy. So there are many, many advantages of moving to an apartment complex. The only other answer I would give is in a city like Bangalore or a Chennai, where there is still land available. If land will always appreciate. So if you're looking from a pure investment perspective, correct, a plot in a good location from a good developer is still a good buy. If you're looking at a pure investment perspective, but if you want to buy a place to live, as Amitji said, in a medium budget, apartment is the best. If you have the money, of course, there are villas, there are many other options. But if you are, say, 1 crore to 2 crores kind of budget, I think apartment is the best option.
Anuj, this question, would it be even relevant for the Mumbai market? Because we very often don't speak about farms and plots, etc. What do we want to say about the Mumbai market in terms of the type of home, that you can invest in?
I agree with you that it's very, very rare for someone to actually buy a plot in Mumbai unless you're a high net worth or an industrialist family. That's where you have a lot of, I would say, plots being purchased along South Bombay. But for an average customer, the ideal budget for Mumbai would range between 1 to 2.5 CR. And if you want to go below 1.5 or under 1, you need to look into other parts like Thane, Navi Mumbai, Dombivli, and Vasai Virar. But gradually, the concept of plotting is not coming up in Mumbai, but it's getting popular in Pune. And even there was a recent launch by a developer. Actually, Lodha Group did a launch recently where they launched plots right in Anjur Fata. So that would be defined as between Thane and Bhiwandi, and they had a pretty good success. Because having a plot gives you a whole level of satisfaction and peace compared to having a house in an apartment. The density in Mumbai is especially high. If you were to buy a property in any housing society, You're
Yeah.
1 in 3,000 families staying there.
Yeah. So that what's the aspiration in Kolkata? Because your reality, so like Anuj mentioned, right? Like Mumbai, the reality may be flat apartments, but the aspiration is there. So what are the trends? What are the what are the buyer preferences in the Kolkata market?
See, in Bengal, it's always been Nijer Badi, where you have a home with a. So if you being a Bengali, I think could
Yeah.
relate to that statement more.
Yeah.
But again, I'm saying, and there are matured customers now, and it's again, one size does not fit all. Each one has their taste and preferences. So I
Yeah.
think firstly, the customer needs to understand whether it's a first home or a second home.
Yeah.
Then at what stage of life he is in.
Yeah.
For people having a larger family or children, obviously. Taking an apartment with all the complex and facilities makes sense.
Yeah.
There are people, at the side end of their career where they're looking more towards a retirement home, they might prefer more of a villa house.
Yeah.
Also, it depends on your working. If you are largely working from home or something, you need a different infrastructure.
Yeah.
When you're working within and you have to travel to office every day, then your location becomes key.
Yeah.
Wherein, you want to be closer to the office, closer to the metro, more accessible.
Yeah.
So I think all these factors, the person has to take an informed and a more calculated decision on what works for him and his family. Each one has its pluses and minuses. Like somebody, I think, mentioned, there's a higher appreciation on land. You can't leave that fact. That is a fact of life. And,
Yeah.
an apartment definitely brings in more convenience and set of, easy to move on, easy to move out, stuff like that. So I think to each one his own, and, we need to fit out there. See, the villa projects or the row houses projects are difficult to get within the city because land is more expensive.
Yeah.
So choosing that, you're moving away from the city. So you have to mix and match and decide what works best for you.
Yeah. So Mani, as a business, you're in a unique position. You are sort of, dealing with all types of houses, right? So from your vantage position, does it look like even now, flats and apartments, they sort of have the lion's share of not just the market share, but even the aspiration share amongst home buyers? What are your observations?
I think flats and apartments are really a great buy, especially if you're looking at the middle segment from around 40 lakhs to about a crore,
Yeah.
because it's very difficult to get like a villa or a villa for a price less than, let's say, 1 to 1.5 crores. And one of the things we need to remember is that the kind of amenities that developers come up with across the country, it's simply amazing, right? Secondly, when you look at the newer developments, especially over the last couple of years, a lot of developers tend to focus on open spaces, right? So even in a COVID kind of scenario, if people can be safe in an apartment complex,
Yeah.
right? And it's not that apartments are going to be different from independent homes, particularly when you look at the newer developments. And it really depends on market to market. As Siddharth pointed out, in Kolkata, it's mostly has to do with apartments. Similarly, in Noida, in Sector 150, for example, 80% of the sector is supposed to be open spaces. So recently, we've seen a lot of flurry of activity, given unique amenities that 150 offers, such as, for example, sports city. So that's one thing. 150. If you look at Gurgaon, for example, one of the things which is becoming popular is under the Deen Dayal Upadhyay scheme, you're having low-rise developments, across Gurgaon. And you're also seeing the emergence of builder floors, right? If you look at markets like Hyderabad, Bangalore, and Chennai, apartments are still popular and have the lion's share of inventory. Of late, we have seen some demand, for example, in villas in cities like Hyderabad, though they tend to be a little away from the central business district and more on the expensive side. And particularly in South, the land is very, very popular for the simple reason that Mr. Joshi said, it offers a potential for price appreciation. And also, if people want to live in an area which is less dense, it offers the opportunity to construct an independent home at a later date. So it really depends on the aspiration of the individual consumer and budget, and also the particular city that they are living.
Yeah. So I think in the interest of time, I'll move to the last question now. We've received a lot of audience questions about this. You've all established, that the last couple of years, prices have been fairly stagnant. We've not seen too much property movement, So now home buyers want to know that when can we start seeing some appreciation in the prices of our homes. So Mr. Joshi, what kind of sort of a time vantage point can we give them? What any kind of a time frame you'd like to guess?
I think both Anuj and Amitji did allude to this earlier. Currently, many developers are pushing for cash flows and therefore not really increasing prices, though there is cost pressure.
Yeah.
In my own mind, in the next 2 to 3 quarters, you will see prices moving up in markets like Bangalore, Chennai. Hyderabad is already seeing. You would be surprised to know that Hyderabad prices have already been moving up in the last 3-4 quarters already. Correct? This is what I would see, but the price rise again would be limited. I go back to the point that to the larger developers who have the ability to deliver, who have the capacity to pull on in these difficult times. You may not see a price rise. In fact, the smaller developers, those who are in distress, might see discounts. So I would only tell the audience to be beware as to where you are buying.
Yeah. So Siddharth, Kolkata has obviously been a unique market in the sense, the highs have been slower, therefore the lows have been slower. So in terms of price appreciation, what kind of a time frame do you think buyers will have to wait for?
I think in Kolkata, we've already seen, price rising from September till March in this quarter because the prices again have been pretty good and all the customers have largely been chasing the better project and the better developers.
Okay.
So I think we've already seen a significant, in all the mid-price segments, even up to 10,000 rupees a square feet, we've seen a significant escalation. Somewhere it's 5%, somewhere it's 10%, somewhere it's even 14-15%. So that's the price range that has already happened in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
Since that has already happened, I think it should sustain for some time. But if metal prices and commodity prices stay at this level, it could rise further. Now, whether that will happen before the festive season or post the festive season, that only the next 2-3 months will say, because the last 2-3 months have gone in lockdown. So currently, it's more important for all of us to maintain those prices for the time being and get back the sales velocity. Once the velocity comes back, but I definitely feel the prices will only go north with farm growth.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Modi, I know that your projects, per se have given great returns, to those who have invested in them. But the overall market, how much time do you think it will take, before investors and home buyers are able to see some kind of price appreciation?
See, at present, I'm working in Noida and Greater Noida. And for last 7 years, if you see, we have sold more than 7,000 apartments over there.
Yeah.
And last year, we launched one project of 600 apartments, and we sold 300 apartments in 1 month only. And that we launched at 5,200. Now the prices are 66, 6,700 we are seeing. So we are able to survive because the prices has risen, material prices has risen so much. Now, further, if you at present, if you are investing these projects also, further I'll see that the kind of inventory we are left with, and there are no more new launches as far as Noida is concerned. So I see that there will be a price rise as soon as we are nearing completion. So again, we are being repetitive as far as buying a home is concerned. I would suggest each and everyone to buy a home. It depends definitely on the developer, and if you don't have any, if you have trust deficit, then definitely no. But if you have trust on the developer, you should go for buying the apartment.
Yeah. So, Mani, do you agree with what Mr. Modi essentially said, that now is the time to sort of look at a great product, and make a great purchase rather than just be a little myopic and look at, by when, what kind of ROI can I look at? Is that how you would analyze the market right now?
Absolutely. See, one of the things that we need to remember is that during the first phase of the pandemic last year, prices did not crash.
Yeah.
And it's so said that prices would decline by as much as 20 to 25%, and prices did not reduce. I mean, in any market, there'll always be discounts on offer, right?
Yeah.
And there's always going to be a stressed developer who wants to kind of dispose of the inventory. So you'll find prices on of certain projects to be on the lower side with others, right? That's a trade-off that buyers need to make. This is the ability of that developer to complete the project, particularly for an under construction project, versus buying with a reputed developer. But as a whole, I would say that the prices will not go south. So you're unlikely to see a secular decline in prices. This is a very price sensitive segment. So developers tend to think hard before they increase the prices. But given the increase in the cost of construction, and if the cost of construction is going to remain the same over the next couple of quarters, you're likely to see a price increase by a couple of percentage points, or you'd see discount percentages down, right? So either of the two is going to happen. So the message that I want to leave buyers with is that prices are definitely, and given the fact that prices have not really appreciated over the last few years, this is a great time to buy real estate because the prices can only go up from here. We've already seen in the case of Hyderabad and Ahmedabad that end user demand and land prices have increased, and consequently, prices in Hyderabad have increased by about 10 to 15% in the last couple of years. And that will likely ring true for other markets, not immediately, but over the next few years.
Yeah. So Sanjay, I know you are representing the home finance side of things, so I won't ask you to comment, on the price appreciation. But here's what I'm curious to know in terms of, people taking loans. Have you seen any specific trends in terms of are they taking the same amount as they were, say, maybe taking 2 years ago? Have the amount of loan, is that disbursal amount, is it reducing? Is it increasing? What have been your observations?
Yeah. So very, I think there's a distinct change that is happening. One, people's own contribution is going up. Two, the amount of, the wife or the spouse is coming in to increase the eligibility of the home buyer. So now about 45-50% or actually more of our home buyers are actually couples who are both earning. So which means that, let's say somebody were to be looking for a 1 BHK in Bombay can actually move to a 2 because his eligibility goes up. That's one. Two, we are seeing a lot of people who were renting out moving to their own accommodations. And I think if I'm a financial planner, let's say I become a financial planner for the person who's asking this question, that is it the right time to buy so that will I be able to sell at an appreciated price? I think just two questions to this person. If you sell tomorrow your house, you're going to buy another house. You're going to buy a house with a larger, so let's say you buy a 2 BHK tomorrow, you will sell that to buy a 3 BHK. So let's say next 3 years, prices do not appreciate. Worst scenario. A 3 BHK will also not appreciate, which you buy after 3 years. So a financial planner, there's nothing wrong in buying right now. You need it. You sell after 3 years, a 3 BHK will also come at a lower price. The second is you want to reduce your exposure. That is why you're selling. So then, so I think the question that this person has, I think he should be absolutely confident. I think anybody in the market, and we do a lot of focus group with our customers also, and there's a lot of resistance or anxiety because of the environment. So there are job losses, there are CIBIL scores getting reputation, CIBIL scores, businesses locked down. I have been staying in a rented accommodation all my life. Should I move to my own house? I need a house. I was staying in a 1 BHK, but I need a house because I have to work from home. How do I manage? I think as a financial planner, we will be very confident if it is within your means. This is the perfect time to take that decision, because the decision of renting to, and a lot of these millennials say that we should be asset light. The concept of do not buy your car, use a Ola. Now just think, as Anuj would understand this, I stay in Lokhandwala. If I were to go to Powai and hire an Ola, and suddenly the driver after midway says that, okay, I'm feeling hungry, you need to get down here and take another cab. That's what happens in rental accommodations. We have all gone through grumpy landlords and we have had issues with them. And that's one of the reasons why we need to have our own house. It is not a pure financial decision. So I think that's something that people need to get out. Plus, I think it's from a financing perspective or a loan perspective. I think like what I said previously, it's a beautiful transmission of interest rate regime. Do not look at it like a low interest rate regime.
Okay.
So if you have been careful, if you've been like frugal, you're not like overspending, I think we should go ahead and buy a house rather than renting and staying with a grumpy landlord. And I think people, so that's the confidence that the viewer should get.
Yeah. So Anuj have deliberately kept it so that you get the last word, because interestingly, you represent a market which has traditionally been the most speculative, right? So of course, this question must be coming up, that fine, I'll buy a home right now, but when can I possibly see some appreciation? So how do you want home buyers to sort of, look at this question?
So Jumur, I would say that I have a slightly different answer compared to all my fellow panelists.
Fantastic.
And it would be that just in October, November 2020 is when new rules for the entire state of Maharashtra were released.
Yeah.
And Maharashtra operates differently compared to other states in a way that earlier every area, be it Mumbai, Thane, Nena, Sidco, had their own planning authorities.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now the authorities will remain the same, but all of them will follow the same rules.
Yeah.
So the FSI you would get in Lower Parel, you get in Nasik as well, and in Kolhapur.
Yeah.
So lots of jobs across Mumbai which were actually unviable,
Yeah.
or they had been launched, they had been sold, but now the developer's in stress. And even if a known developer would come in and rescue him, the job just wasn't viable.
Yeah.
Now with the new rules, all such jobs have become viable.
Yeah.
So I would say number of developers have decreased tremendously across Maharashtra, but every developer share is going up.
Yeah.
So even though we have experienced a substantial decrease in inventory overhang due to stamp duty rebate,
Yeah.
I see supply going up drastically across Mumbai, Thane, all parts of majorly MMR.
Yeah.
And it would take us approximately a year or longer as well to see any kind of price appreciation. So
Thank you for that candid answer, Anuj. I think it's important to sort of give our home buyers a realistic timeline.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you so much, audience members, for being there with us. This was a fantastic decision and this was an amazing discussion. Thank you, panelists, for such incredible responses. We hope to see you soon, our audience members. That's all for today. Stay safe, stay healthy till we see you again. Bye-bye.